If you have questions, concerns, and are just lost when it comes to planning for retirement, meet Steve Hoyl and Derek Caldwell of the Hoyl Financial Group. Believe it or not, there's a new average that's about $5,300 a month. And if you put that annually, that's about $63,000 a year. So how much of that really comes from Social Security? And if you're lucky enough to have this thing called a pension, that's really the starting point here, right? I mean, it seems simple, but as with everything, it can't be that simple.
No, Jess, people used to have, back in the old days, back in the 80s or 90s, everybody had this huge pension, or most people did, and they had a Social Security that they used, and then they had a lot of cash, extra money that they used, but their pension was so great for retirement. The thing that's happened is there's not pensions anymore. In the 80s, companies really started moving to 401ks, good or bad. But we tell people a lot, you can create your own pension. We help people do that all the time, Jess. People contact us all the time and say, I'm turning 59 and a half next month, or at the beginning of the year, or I just turned 60. But at 59 and a half, Jess, you can take control of your retirement monies 95% of the time. And then you can set it up so that you have income, each and every month for the rest of your life. And if you have a spouse, they get it too. But what I tell people is, let that income, have an income plan, a written income strategy. And what's great about it is that will roll up each year so much more than you could ever grow your money. People are so asphyxiated on growing the nest egg, which is very important. But everybody says the number one fear, Jess, is running out of money. But no, it's really running out of income. Jess, that's what people need in retirement. That's what people want. Each and every month, you need to know that you're going to cover that. And we talk about the average money people will spend in retirement is $5,300 a month or $63,000 a year. Well, just somebody that's making $30,000 or $50,000, it's going to be less. But for a lot of people, it's going to be a whole lot more. People come to me all the time and say, I'm counting on Social Security. Well, just Social Security was never meant to be a retirement plan. It was a supplementary plan.
That's right. Yeah, 100%. It was then, it is now, especially when you think about all these conversations. Oh, Social Security is going to run out. It's going to do this. It's going to be depleted. I know a lot of folks are worried about that as well, which again just circles back to the original point here of why it's so important to have a written income plan, folks. I don't mean just a legal, notepad that I have right here in my hands and you write 401k this much. That's not a plan. That's simply writing down what's in your accounts and talking about those different buckets of money. A plan is when you assign purpose to that money, right, Steve?
Absolutely. You need an income plan, but you need a tax strategy to make sure that that income plan is mean and lean as it can be, because everybody wants to do what we call retire Texas style, but you've got to have a plan and you've got to have time on your side, Jess. People that get started early, 3 to 5 years, even up to 10 years before you retire, you're going to retire so much stronger and have so much more confidence in retirement. Because you got out the gate early. You put the plan together. You're going to have so much more income. Another big thing, Jess, people come right up on retirement and don't have an emergency fund. The air conditioner goes out. All of a sudden, the garage breaks down. You've got to have that money so it does not wreck that income strategy. The other thing it does, Jess, when people start taking after-tax money out of their 401k or IRA, all of a sudden it wrecks the tax plan. So good planning, solid planning, being realistic about the numbers, because, Jess, the numbers never lie.
You mentioned a few moments ago how 401ks, they really took off in the 80s. And you're exactly right, Steve. Congress created this in a way to defer taxes on certain income, but not use it as a primary retirement plan. And for many Americans, let's be honest, that's exactly what it's become. So is the 401k dead? Yahoo Finance asked Charles Payne with Fox Business.
I don't know that it's dead. I will say, though, that the 401k hasn't lived up to the hype. And I think that's one of the problems, right? And every year they come out and they'll say we have this many 401k millionaires, right? And it sounds like a huge number.
That's cool.
Then you say, well, how many people have a 401k? And it's like 0.03% of everyone with one. So the promise was that if you just put this money in, it was going to end up being worth a lot of money. And I don't know that it's dead, but I think people have to approach it differently. And I think they're starting to, particularly like the 60-40 portfolio. I think that's a huge mistake. On the 40 side, 40% in bonds, I think is just a massive mistake at this point.
So, Steve, where do you stand on this? I mean, do you think 401ks are going to get a revamp here or what?
Well, Jess, I think the problem with 401ks is that people have gotten where that's their only savings vehicle. I see people roll up all the money they can in a 401k, and then all of a sudden something happens and they need some cash. And all of a sudden they're having to claw in and pay a penalty, the 10% penalty, because they're under 59.5 to get money out of the 401k. And I think the other thing that I have the most issues with the 401k is we tell people, save all the money in that because you're going to get this big tax break. But all of a sudden you get ready to retire and you realize that 100% of that 401k is taxable. And just all of a sudden people are in the highest tax bracket paying that when, yes, I think it's better to not get the deductions and do Roth conversions or Roth IRAs so you have tax-free money in retirement. I look at my daughter who's a CPA, her husband's an attorney. She does more of the audit side, not tax as much. But I tell her, Hillary, you need to be saving all of your money in a Roth, some type of Roth, and get those taxes out of the way, Jess. If not, the government is your profit partner the rest of your life. And people laugh at me and say, what do you mean? Every time you take some money, all of a sudden you've got to pay the government their part. And the same thing, every time you earn $1, they earn money in there too. So, when you can get the government out of your business, do Roth conversions. Jess, we have some really fantastic programs to sit down and help people figure out how many years over should they Roth? Should it be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? How much should you Roth? But I'm going to tell you, Jess, having tax-free income is lean. It's mean. It means you can keep from having your Social Security tax. Another guy called in the other day from our show, Jess, and said, whoa. Social Security is no longer taxed. Are you not well read? I'm like, Social Security is not taxed if you make a little bit of money. Social Security is taxed for most of us. Also what we call the Medicare tax, the fancy name, but all of a sudden it's expensive. So, Jess, I also think after we talk about taxes, we think about lots of different ways you could save. A fixed indexed annuity is a great place to save money. And then you can use that later as an income strategy. For a while, people were plowing money in CDs instead. But as rates are not 5.5 anymore, they're coming down to 2.8%. I don't think that's going to be as a great place to put it. A lot of people put money in municipal bonds. I think municipal bonds have their place, especially for people in higher tax brackets. But I just think there's lots of other ways to save outside of a 401k, even though I think the 401k has been good for the American worker because they take a job, they go sign up for it, they don't know what they're doing, and they automatically forces them to save. But yes, I think we need to do savings different. But I'm going to tell you, Jess, we can talk about all these different things. But, like with fixed annuities, as you save, you get to control when you pay those taxes. When you look at municipal bonds, all of a sudden you can have tax-free. So I think there's lots of other ways than a 401k.
Now, if you are planning to retire in 2026, did you know that you're already in the critical zone when your decisions could actually decide how comfortable you're going to be in retirement? This year is bringing us, of course, lingering inflation, changing tax laws, and rising Medicare costs. So what financial moves, Steve, should someone make right now to avoid, a costly mistake later?
Well, I think right out the gate, folks should think about switching to income planning from investing. People like to beat their chest and say, I've saved this much money. But really what matters is how much income you can generate from Social Security. If you do have a pension, from your annuities, having a really strong fixed indexed annuity for income that you and your spouse can outlive is really important. For so many people that don't have pensions, we use annuities a lot to figure out your own pension plan so that you have money in retirement. And I think the other thing, as you think about the lingering inflation that we're having, it's going to take more money in retirement each year. Jess, I tell people and they laugh at me, but, when I saw gas the other day at over $5 when I was traveling, 6 months from now, a Big Mac is going to be $30. It's really scary. But I think it's really important also. So many people come to see us and they've saved so much money, but they don't have any emergency money. All their money is taxable. You really need to build that war chest. Having 12 to 24 months of cash is realistic, that you can access. Right out the gate, you need to have 6 months to pay your bills, but 12 to 24 in different cash instruments that are coming due at different times is really, really helpful. I think also having 5 to 7 years of stable assets that are dependable, predictable for income is really, really important. And then I think the other big one that people look at me like I'm an idiot, but as a married couple today retiring at age 65, you could spend over $250,000 in health care out-of-pocket costs. Yeah, that's exactly what I said, $250,000. That's not what Medicare pays. That's not nursing home. That's out-of-pocket health care costs. And I'm telling you something, that can really wreck a retirement plan. So I think it's really important to think about how you're going to pay those, what type of account you're going to use. The other thing is planning down the road from required minimum distributions. I see a lot of people that still have a pension come to me and say, I'm not worried about RMDs. That's down at 73, 74. It'll probably be 75 before you know it. But what I can tell you is that all of a sudden you let all that money roll up, it's going to throw you in the highest tax bracket possible. So understanding what your future looks like for taxes and planning for those required minimum distributions is everything. I just think it's important. A lot of people still think the 4% withdrawal rate is realistic. I think it's outdated. I think there's so many other ways to take that money. We work with so many people with Hoyl Wealth, and we've really helped them come up with a really strong strategy for retirement. And I just think looking at all the options, one size does not fit all, Jess. And it's so important to have several different strategies for income, for growth, for retirement, for taxes, for healthcare costs. One of the things we're doing a lot of right now at Hoyl is we're helping people with a plan that helps you pay for a plan that helps you pay for long-term care if you need it, at-home care, or terminal illness. It's a way to use some of your money maybe that's coming out of a CD that's not earning 5% anymore. It's not earning 4%, but it's a way to put it to work for your family for tax-free growth and also take care of those tragedies if they happen, because, Jess, those can wreck a retirement plan. So talk to us when you call us. It's a great way to really plan for you, your family, and most of all, your future.
If you'd like to sit down with Steve and Derek or a member of the Hoyl Financial Group, visit retiretexasstyle.com.
Investment advice offered through Hoyl Wealth Management, a Texas-registered investment advisor able to provide investment advice in states where it's registered, exempt, or excluded from registration. Content contained herein should not be construed as an offer or solicitation for investment advice or for the purchase or sale of any security, insurance, or other investment product. Investments involve the risk of loss, including possible loss of principal. Please consult with a qualified financial, tax, accounting, or legal professional before implementing any ideas or strategies discussed here. Content provided is obtained from sources believed to be reliable but cannot be guaranteed as to its accuracy or completeness. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance products, including annuities offered through Steve Hoyl, Texas Insurance License 716036. Annuity guarantees rely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. Read your contract for restrictions, limitations, or penalties. penalties. Steve Hoyl is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if Steve Hoyl is licensed in your state, please call 806-371-9473.